Hello and welcome to another Writerly Witterings. I'll apologise in advance. I'm testing out a new doohickey here, which I'm hoping will function correctly and not be a pain, but just in case the sound quality isn't as you're used to, I apologise now. Now, many years ago, I read some Robert Graves' I, Claudius, because I'd heard it was a really interesting story, and it is a very good story, the story of Claudius, the Emperor of Rome. And as a result of that, I bought 2 volumes of The Greek Myths by Robert Graves. They're up there, and they're brilliant. They're really good books. The only thing is that they're fairly dry. I, Claudius was a really interesting story. But his books on the Greek myths were a little bit more stern in terms of a task to read. Some years ago, when I was wandering around America, doing a book signing I think, I found this, I think it was in San Francisco actually, in a small bookshop, The Labours of Hercules by Agatha Christie, featuring Hercule Poirot. And I read it and I quite enjoyed it. It's a nice little read. It's different though, because it's effectively a series of short stories, very loosely linked by this one thread, which is Poirot is intrigued by the concept of himself mirroring the Labours of Hercules from the Greek myths. And that's fine, and I read it quite happily in America while I was over in San Francisco, and it never bothered me to pick it up again, but I did over Christmas because I was looking for something that was just comfort reading for me. So I picked it up again and started going through it, and it was a nice set of stories. It sort of tails off a little bit at the end, I think. It's so often the case that authors will start doing the odd short story because there's a bit of a gap between novels that they're writing, or they've been asked to do something and it's 200 quid, you're not going to turn down the money. But not all short stories are as strong as others. Some of these are brilliant. Some are not quite so good. With the challenges that poor old Hercules had to go through, I was very fortunate that before Christmas I was asked if I would review Heroes by Stephen Fry. Now, I am not a huge fan of Stephen Fry. I'm sure he's a delightful gentleman, but he had so much exposure on TV for so long that I just found it boring to hear his voice or see his face. But I have to say, he writes with incredible charm, wit and joy. When you read that one particular goddess in Greece, having slept with Zeus and Amphitryon in rapid succession, she had been made pregnant by each of them. Twins were forming in her womb, 2 sons, one fathered by Zeus and the other by Amphitryon. This phenomenon of polyspermy is common enough in littering mammals like dogs, cats and pigs, but is rare in humans, rare but not unknown. It rejoices in the name heteropaternal superfundication. And then there's a note, and at the bottom of the page it says, even though the sound of it produces consternation, as Mary Poppins and Bert the Chimney Sweep might sing. And that's the delight of this book. It's not a dry read at all. The Greek gods were treated with a certain amount of disrespect by the Greeks, and this is a glorious retelling of the Greek myths. It actually follows on from a book that he wrote last year called, I believe, Mythos, which I haven't got yet. Unfortunately, having read this, I'm going to have to buy it because this had me almost laughing out loud, and it's just a delightful retelling of the stories, as I said before. It goes into all of the different heroes. So it mentions the Labours of Hercules. It talks about Perseus, talks about Jason, Orpheus, Bellerophon, Atalanta, Oedipus, Theseus, and so on. It's wonderful. If you've ever wondered what on earth the story of the Minotaur was all about, get this book. And the nice thing is it does go through the actual Labours of Hercules. So having read this, I was actually reading it in conjunction with this at the same time, so I could catch up on what exactly Agatha Christie was going on about with the different Labours of Hercules in this book. So I can recommend these two. But if you're interested in Greek history, the philosophy of the Greeks, and the myths that they lived by. This is just a fantastic read. I can thoroughly recommend it. With luck, it'll be in paperback soon too. There's one other group of books I wanted to talk about today, which are these. It is said that without Alexander Wilson, there is no James Bond, there's no Bourne, and there is no George Smiley. That was Tony Parsons said that. And he may well be right. You can see elements of the British stiff upper lip secret agent going around Europe, getting involved in Germany just before the Second World War, having the incredible difficulties of undercover, nasty people who are here to kill foreign ambassadors in the UK and other books. But what I have to say is, I've read 2 out of these and I'm not sure I'm going to read the third, even though the third is thankfully the thinnest. But when I was a kid, I used to read various things that were of my time. Biggles was a bit before my time, but I still read them. And when you pick up these books that were written, I assume between the wars, most of them, you suddenly realise just how dire the reading public must have been to have got excitement from them, because the writing is okay, it's light, it's a bit repetitive, exceedingly misogynistic and xenophobic. I mean, some of the things written about foreigners in these books just made me gasp aloud. I was staggered that anybody could have ever written that sort of thing. So, on the other hand, it is very interesting to get a view of how exactly people used to think about the rest of the world. Not everybody, I'm sure, but the middle classes, some of the lower classes, no doubt, and probably a lot of the upper classes must have had some of these views, because apparently these books did sell well. Which is, I think, quite terrifying. Now, I hope this has been interesting. As I said, my recommendations, should you decide to have a go at them, would be the Stephen Fry book on heroes and The Labours of Hercules, The Devil's Dozen. Very, very good books, but this in particular, fantastic. I'm hoping to do a brief outline of good books that I enjoy as I get them. I may, every now and again, bring up really quite old books. One of the books I'm trying to get round to now is Joseph Andrews by Henry Fielding. If you've never read any Henry Fielding, buy a copy of Tom Jones and read it. His writing is just delightful. He may have been born many, many centuries ago. He had a completely different style of life, but what he wrote is as applicable today as it ever was then. These books are just stunningly good. So I intend to review the books that I've enjoyed, maybe every now and again, just for the hell of it, because I don't see why I should force myself to suffer. I will also talk about books that I really have not enjoyed, and I'll give you an idea why. But I think that hopefully it'll give you a feel for the sort of books I read, the sort of books I like, therefore you'll get a better view probably on the sort of books I write. I hope that makes sense. So if you like that idea and you want to see more of my reviews of books, I'd be really grateful if you could put a comment in. And this time, quite seriously, because this is a new diversion, a bit of a digression from my normal thing, let me know what you think. I'd be grateful also if I could hear you comment on what you reckon to the sound quality, because if this thing's no good, that's fine, it gets chucked back. The old microphone I've got is a long boom microphone, which is brilliant. It seems to work quite well. This has the appeal that it's wireless to the camera, so I don't have to have either a microphone sitting on top of the camera, hopefully trying to pick up my voice. I can potentially move around with this, and so the idea is I thought it would be worthwhile trying a microphone like this so that I can see whether I can go out with the camera and look at a little bit more of the landscape, take the camera on walks across Dartmoor, for example. It would just be a lot easier with this wireless device than with the boom microphone, I think. So let me know what you think of the sound quality. Let me know whether you think this is a good digression talking about books, and I will look forward to speaking to you again soon. Thanks very much for watching. Take care. And cheers. Right, now to put these books away again.